Oh, you know what? I've wanted to be here this morning. I want to be a little casual. We've got 20 minutes, so I want to be casual for a couple of reasons. I'm tired and ill-prepared, but I'm going to tell you why. I'm not all that ill-prepared. I told you at the first of the summer I was going to do this sermon series. Look, I'm going to use a podium on the Psalms and the rhythms of life. So back in May, I started looking through the whole summer and assigning certain scriptures, and I probably made more notes on this one and one other than I did the rest of them. So in a good way, I'm prepared today ahead of time. I've got notes. That's not always good, though, because I'll end up trying to read them and think, what was I thinking when I wrote that? And I'll do that work in front of you today. The other reason is because a friend of mine stopped by this morning. I don't know why I started this. I have a study I could go hide in, but you all know how to find me there. So I've told you before, I go to the coffee shop 5 or 6 days a week because friends are there, and then I go there on Sunday morning, and it's like everyone just leaves you alone. You sit in the same booth, and there's this little thing over it that says, don't bother this person. So I get great time to prepare. But this morning, my friend called me, and honestly, he would have found me here or at the coffee shop or wherever. But he came, and he said, I'm probably bothering you. And I said, this is my preparation time, but I'm preaching about the rhythms of life. What better preparation than to set my notes aside this morning and spend a few minutes in fellowship? Do you know there's always time for food and there's always time for conversation? And if that's not true in your life, I don't mean to tell you what to do or how to live your life, but you might consider changing something. There's always time for food. And there's always time for conversation. So my friend Chuck prepared me for the sermon today in a really different kind of way. I also wanted to take a minute. You know, I'm talking about the rhythms of life. I haven't beat the drum when I've said that in a few weeks. Isn't that nice? I wanted to take a minute to just say how much I enjoy my life. If I haven't told you that before, I want to tell you that now. Rick wants to applaud. Help it. Don't leave a brother hanging. I enjoy my life. I have liked being me ever since I was a little bitty kid. It's a wonderful thing to be, you know, and a wonderful way to think and to look at life. But last week you shared this praise team with Arlington, the city of Arlington, with Northwest Christian Church. And for those who went, we all say thank you. It was a great experience. It was wonderful. The best part was they had hotel reservations at a really nice hotel, and John walked in and said, I'm John, and they gave him a key, and Jamie walked in and said, I'm Jamie, and they gave her a key, and Lanny walked in and he said, I'm Lanny, and they gave him a key. We went to Roswell, and Saturday I had like 9 rooms reserved, and they were all under somebody else, Doug Boysden. When we finally figured out the problem, then every room was Doug Boysden, so I had to check out 9 rooms and hand out keys. It took all afternoon. We had a great time in Arlington. We really did. When I looked up, we all the leaders on a normal Sunday morning, many of the leaders, not all, were gone with me. Ronnie was out of town, and I would call upon Sean most of the time to preach, although Scott preaches from time to time, once a year or so. And then for prayer time, you know. So I called upon one of your elders who said, I've never done this before. I said, it's going to be a great day. Called upon my daughter who said, I've never done this by myself, Dad. I said, it's going to be a great day. Isn't that nice? You know, y'all applauded a moment ago when I said how much I enjoy my life. Applaud. Give yourselves a hand for being so able. You know, I don't want to say self-sufficient because that's not what you're being. You're taking care of each other. You're anything but self-sufficient. You're giving to one another. And so another reason I really enjoy my life is this weekend. I mean, I had a chance to go to Roswell. You all here already know the story. But things that happened while I was there, I was singing in a restaurant on Thursday night, and this was my idea. I got to be there Friday, but it's going to be a long day, and it's going to be busy at the end, and I don't want to come driving into town. I don't want to drive 6 hours and get there and go to work on Friday, so I drove 6 hours on Thursday and got there and went to work. We got there with a half hour to clean up. And I'm sitting in a restaurant singing for a couple $100, enough money to buy 2 really cheap rooms. By the way, if you're sharing a room with somebody, don't lock the deadbolt, okay? Don't do that. Don't do that. Stop being paranoid. People break into motel rooms and they kill people. And if you're afraid that's going to happen to you, buy a lottery ticket because the odds are incredible. Don't do that. But anyway, we were there. Thursday night, I had been thinking about this person in my life. You talk about rhythms. I'd been thinking about this person that I went to seminary with. And when I left seminary, you folks here know my story. I left in a hurry. I mean, one day I was in class. We had a week off, and when everyone came back, I wasn't there no more. And it wasn't like the kid who was troubled by the theology, because I was way up there with those folks. It wasn't like the kid who was flunking out and then just did. I was making good grades, and I was helping. I just didn't come back. Ooh, nice. And, excuse me. And, one person got that, or had the uncouth to laugh. I'm surprised it wasn't Esteban. But I'm sitting there Thursday night singing, and I looked up in the back of the room, and I'm like, I know that face. And then he walked up to me, and he said, Doug, do you remember me? I said, Matt, yes, I do. I said, where are you, Matt? Where are you? And he said, I'm at First Christian Church in Ruidoso. And I said, this is biblical. I said, you dog. You Canaanite dog. What are you doing because I used to want to live in Ruidoso. And I thought, unless you make trinkets to sell to tourists, there's nothing to do there. What would I do? And then I thought, I became a minister. I thought, wow, you could preach at the church in Ruidoso and have a life. And I used to say, there's only one church that could take me away from Wylie Christian, and that is First Christian Church on Hole Road in Ruidoso. And then one day, Tony said, Jim's retiring and the church is open. Do you really want to enter search and call and see? And I said, oh, no, don't call my bluff. I don't want to leave. I was just kidding. Wouldn't it be nice? But Graham has a history with First Christian Church in Ruidoso. He is a library there in memory of his young daughter. And I know that when Paul and Sarah spent time in Ruidoso, they were faithful to be in church on Sunday morning. And so it was, I said to my friend Matt, I haven't been to Ruidoso in a long time, and on one of my next opportunities to be away, I'm going to plan to be with you. And then he invited the praise team. So we may have to do a road trip again. But how nice to see somebody that I hadn't seen in so long, right there. Coincidence, yeah. There were quite a few people on the patio that night who came because they read it. But to see Matt, there was a rhythm in that, and to be with him. How nice. Someone asked me just last night, he said, you're going to preach tomorrow? I said, yes. I'm not only going to preach, I'm going to teach 2 chapters of Mark at 9 o'clock. Not because I'm that committed, because I want a different Sunday off. I want to be with you today. And they said, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you be, in case you don't know, if you haven't seen it, we were rock stars for like 3 days. I mean, it was nice to get there on Thursday night and people it was nostalgic to watch them trip over themselves because Doug and Shannon are here. The band's here. And then they said, how you go from that to preach? I said, you've got to be careful not to change hats. What do you mean not change hats? I say you got to be the same person. Both places. I'll give you an example. Before I played a song yesterday, I said, have you ever noticed that people will buy you a beer, pass you a joint, but they'll fight you for your pills? And we had a preacher playing drums behind me who said, Doug. And I said, oh, no. I tell that story from the pulpit. It's fine here. So out among the heathens, they're scolding me for language. I can't believe it. And you guys let me get by with all kinds of stuff. Rhythms of life. Okay. All that is totally unrelated to Psalm 9, but completely related to the series this summer and how we experience the rhythms of life. By the way, Matt was in preaching class with me too, and I told him what I was doing, and he said, I never did like what Dr. Jeter said. So here we go. I want to talk about America a little bit too today, because it is July the 5th. And so I wanted to start out with, I've given you visual aids for the summer. So here's another one. You laughed when I brought it back from Tennessee in December. Now, you laugh now, but when I was in Arlington, I went to Cabela's, and they sell real raccoon skins for $99. So if I'm on your Christmas list, just don't forget. I could make a real hat, not this Oriental imitation. Yeah. But I wanted to talk about Daniel Boone. Everybody thinks about this hat and Davy Crockett. I'm going to give you a history lesson. You probably already know it. Davy Crockett didn't care anything about this hat. He was a congressman. He didn't like fighting Indians. He was a good shot because if you weren't, you didn't eat in his day. But he wasn't a soldier or a warrior. If he died at the Alamo, it might have been rather reluctantly, as if dying isn't reluctant whenever it happens and on whoever's part. Benjamin Franklin probably embraced the coonskin cap more than David Crockett, because in France he was known for wearing the coonskin cap, and his comment was, if that's who they think I am over here and it makes them happy, then go with it. Like being in Roswell, I guess, Daniel Boone, on the other hand, Daniel Boone was a real character. I mean, this guy was tough. He fought in the Revolutionary War as a teenager. He was hit in the ankle with a mini ball, and all we think about Daniel Boone is walking all over America, walking from the Carolinas to Kentucky to Pennsylvania and the Missouri Territory all his life. But ever since that incident in the Revolutionary War as a teenager, he walked with a limp. So picture the old rugged guy in the buckskin clothing walking with a limp. He was a big guy. He was a fighter. He wore a coonskin cap. And he was everything that we like to think David Crockett or our other heroes are. He was a tough guy. But what I liked was the television show, which may not have been historically accurate all the time. There are times they worked hard to put Daniel Boone in the right context, but the ultimate context for the Daniel Boone series from the 60s was not the historical character Daniel Boone, but it was the status of America in the world around us. The archetypes are there in the series, and it's always art that reflects back to us and then reinforces our archetypes. If there's something that you really ought to know about the Daniel Boone series, well, for one thing, one of the things I mean is little Israel. When he goes to bed in the cabin, he's got his own room with a dresser with a little lantern on it. And when they feed him, he has meat and 2 sides on the plate. Do you get this? This looks like a perfect little boy's life in 1963. But if you've toured any old cabins, they've got wonderful ones down in Tarrant County, where the Parkers and other famous people who settled this part of the world, they've moved cabins from counties around into one area for a little cabin village. When you look at them, one of the things you'll notice is nobody had their own bedroom with their own little nightstand and their own lantern. It didn't happen. And I doubt they ate meals with chicken, mashed potatoes, and green peas, and a roll with a pat of butter on the side. All of these things reinforce the stereotypes or the archetypes of America. They reinforce not only who we are, but who we want to think we are. What it is we celebrate about ourselves. And I'm not saying that it's false. I'm not saying it's not who we are. I'm saying it's one look at that. And so in the stories, the thing I like about the series is the way it ends. Is that in the end of the Daniel Boone stories, the bad guy never gets killed or arrested. Have you noticed that? Go back and watch them. The bad guy always ends up being sorry for everything that he did wrong, and then the community always embraces him. A lot of times the bad guy is a newcomer who ends up by the end of the series moving into Boonesboro and becoming a part of the very same community. Now, we know that doesn't always happen. Matter of fact, I want to know when it was in Hollywood that the bad guy became the main character in the story and the one that we felt something for. Because it didn't happen in the 60s. And even in the 70s when I was growing up, I remember the guy in the white hat eventually winning in the story. But somewhere in the time that's gone by, the bad guy has become the glamorous one, the one that's celebrated and elevated. And then again, bad guys in our culture don't end up being accepted into part of the community. They end up being ostracized and sent away, and for a lot of good reasons, and for a lot of things that need to be looked at and corrected. I had an encounter this weekend. You know, my sermons I prepare by studying and then by looking around. So a lot of times things that happen in the week that I'm preparing make their way in, and this is no exception. I was having coffee at a motel, and it wasn't the nice hotel where they gave us the key. It was the one that I worked and earned $200 to pay for, and bought 2 rooms for $50 a piece. And I'm pleased. I'm not dissing a $50 room anywhere. They're great. I'm going to stay in another one. But it qualifies as the continental breakfast for you. That's all I'm saying. The room was fine, but the continental breakfast lacked a little. And so there I was sitting outside the breakfast room having coffee. And I went back in to get a refill, and I had seen this woman go in with a boy who turned out to be 8 years old. And when I got inside, I noticed that she was not acting right. She was a little weird. And when I got inside, I couldn't get to the coffee pot because she had him there, and she was like this, moving and saying, okay, you get the beer, you get the bowl, the cereal, the milk in the cup, and then the cup of milk into here because you don't pour the milk in here, and you got to do it just like this. And he's just standing there, and she says, now, and she backs up and she says, you do it, everybody. And there's only about 4 of us in the room. Everybody watch. How's he going to do? What kind of grades is he going to get? Is he going to get an A? Is he going to get an X? What's he going to get? Boy's 8 years old. He ought to be able to take care of himself by now. 8 years old. How's he going to do? And I made my way up there to get coffee, and I tried to just nudge the guy without her seeing. I just, wow. That kind of microscope to get a bowl of cereal? And then I went back outside. After all, it's none of my business, right? And I sat down, and I'm having coffee, and they come back outside, and she's got him standing up, and she's just giving him the what for, and the language got rougher. He did something wrong. He evidently got the wrong amount of milk or something, and she didn't like it. And so she began to curse him. At one point, I saw this little 8-year-old boy push his mother. Now, he didn't swing on her. He didn't try to push her down or hurt her. I think he loves her. But I think in that moment he was saying, please, give me some space. And I wanted to grab her and say, what are you doing? And then the thought occurred to me, she wouldn't know what I was talking about. This is not her fault. She's mentally ill. And then I thought about this 8-year-old boy, and I want today to prophesy good things over him, if that's how it works. I want to say he's going to grow up and get a college degree, and he's going to go into mental health and medicine, and he's going to make a difference in his community. I pray. But probably he's going to end up shoplifting or steal a car or hit his mother or assault someone else. And I'm looking at a coffee incident this weekend and saying, this doesn't have to be. And it's not his fault, and it's certainly not her fault, even though we can see where there's a break. And I don't know what we're doing. So I bring you this optimistic psalm reading today after that story. Psalm 9 through 20. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed. Yeah, I got 2 different. I'm going to read. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to read mine. You can follow with that. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Sing the praises of the Lord enthroned in Zion. Proclaim among the nations what he has done. For he who avenges blood remembers. He does not ignore the cries of the afflicted. Lord, see how my enemies persecute me. Have mercy and lift me up from the gates of death, that I may declare your praises in the gates of daughters of Zion, and there rejoice in your salvation. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead, all the nations that forget God. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. Arise, Lord, do not let mortals triumph. Let the nations be judged in your presence. Strike them with terror, Lord. Let the nations know they are only mortal. Shannon printed that for me this week, and she said, that is a horribly dark psalm. And I said, the topic this week is, what do you do with someone who threatens you? What do you do with someone who threatens you? What do you do when you really are the victim? What do you do with that? You know, we want to say, well, I forgive. But I'm not sure we do, and I'm not sure that we can, especially in a moment. Forgiveness may be one of those things like repentance and recovery that takes some time and some intention. We want to say, I care for those people, but and I pray that God would have compassion upon them and that they would come to the truth. But what we really mean is, I really want something to happen to those people. Because they threatened me, they attacked me, they hurt me, I am just, and they are not. Who are these people? Well, they're anyone that you can not like. No matter how hard you try, you can't like them or have compassion on them. And for all of us, it's someone different, but there's a line in the sand that when someone crosses, we're done with them. They may not be people we know. They may be people who represent a particular demographic or an archetype in our community. For example, it's awful hard to care and to have compassion for sexual offenders. Matter of fact, it's awful easy to become one nowadays. Can someone explain to me why an 18 or 19-year-old boy with an attraction to a 15-year-old girl is a crime now? Why is it okay if you're 29 and the girl's 19? How do we say you reached an age where your hormones should become automatically regulated and your attractions should come in line with ours? But you know, sexual offenders are a very serious problem, and like some of you, I may have trouble accepting that, especially if I find a way to say that a sexually offended person, offender is a person too, but then if they target children, now you've really gotten into my wheelhouse. How about yours? Surely God can't have compassion for them. And even if I pray that, do I really mean it? You know, you may pray, and we may pray for them and for ourselves, and we may talk about what potential horrible things happened to that person. What made this person mentally ill? Or what made this person the way they are? What damaged them that they have gone on to damage other people? And we may talk about mental illness and how helpless some people are, and even criminals may be helpless against mental illness and its control or their loss of control because of it. But, you know, after all of this is said, we really still can't feel good about those people. We try to say, love the sinner, hate the sin. That's a big bunch of hooey, you know it? If you hate the sin, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, it's hard not to hate the people who are engaged in it. We really can't feel good about somebody. I'm not picking on sexual offenders or children, people who molest children or attack children. I'm picking on whoever it is that you cannot feel good about. No matter how we try, we wouldn't really treat them like we would others. And we wouldn't want to take these people home with us. And if it's not a sexual offender or someone like that, then who is it? Is it the mentally ill or the homeless person? You know, you want to be in a relationship with them. You want to say, I have compassion for them. Matter of fact, you want to engage them. You want to trust them, and you want to treat them like anyone else, but you can't, and you don't, because you know what they're going to do, right? They're going to ask you for something, right? And what is it? They're going to want some money, or something as valuable as money. And so it is. I don't want to talk to them. I have compassion for them, but please don't engage me. Don't make eye contact. Don't sit at my table. And you know we're right. Because the very minute that we acknowledge them, they make our worst fear come true. And they ask for money. Well, they ask because they can't not. They can't help it. You want to treat them like anyone else that you encounter, but you can't. And you know why? Because they're not like anyone else that you encounter. They are people. Unique and individual people that deserve to be engaged at the point where they are. And that makes us uncomfortable because we know they're going to ask. And you know who else is uncomfortable? They are. Because they already know you didn't want to talk to them. Because they already knew that you knew they were going to ask. And as much as they would like to break the stereotype and not ask, they can't not ask. They can't not. They're going to bring it up. Even if they know what you think. When they ask, they know that you think they are unworthy. So they swallow the last thing they have, their pride. And they accept your judgment over them. They take their proper place. And then, like the beggar that you know they are, they ask. Maybe it's not someone who's homeless. Maybe it's not someone who's homeless or someone who needs money. Maybe it's the person in your church that you don't want to engage because they're going to want to talk to you about theology and work through their own journey right in front of you, and you don't want to be that person. Or maybe they're going to share a problem with you that you don't want to hear, so you don't engage them. Or maybe they're just going to seek a compliment. You know, the compliment seekers always walk around and say, did I do good? Don't you like me? Do I look nice today? And you say, why do you do that? And the truth is, they know why. They can't stop. Because somebody needs to say to all of us every day, you look nice. You're worthy. You're a beautiful person. I am really glad that life and God put you in my path today, just like you are. Fred Craddock, who did work with the Appalachian people and the poor, said this, if you can't love them, don't come here to help. If you're going to judge them, don't come here to help. If you're going to ask them to give you the last thing they have, which is their pride, don't come here to help. Help because you care. And you give people the dignity that they have. I have said this in terms of, and I said it as a people who didn't like me, but I like that I said it. They like me. They're good people. If someone presents to you and says, God made me a person who has an orientation toward people of the same sex, and you don't believe that people are born that way, well, guess what? The only way you can treat that person with real human dignity and with divine dignity is to take them at their word, because you have no way of proving or establishing anything else. If they're wrong, they're wrong. It's not on you. Take people at their word. If they tell you I'm depressed, listen to them. If they're mentally ill, stop blaming them and listen, engage. Stop taking people's pride. It's just a way of bolstering up our own weak spiritual existence. There's a lot of good work being done. Thich Nhat Hanh, who I think is still living, but he's been very ill, has done work with people who have suffered father wounds to say, go back and do this. If your father or your mother or coach or anyone else said things that hurt you when you were young, do this work. Imagine yourself a 5-year-old child speaking to that person as a 5-year-old child. I've done that. My daddy, 5 years old, the guy who kicked my butt at times, Sometimes when I might have needed it, and other times I'm not sure. Me and him, 2 5-year-old kids, sitting down on the playground talking about what we're afraid of. Wow. If that doesn't help you have compassion, I think it was Elio Delio that said this, and if she didn't, I'm going to let her say it. If she didn't, then I said it, okay? If every person you encountered, you saw them as someone who was going to die, you could be moved to nothing less than true love and compassion. Think about it. The vilest person in the world dies, and we take water and flowers and run to the family and talk about what a terrible thing it is. And everybody you encounter this day, no matter what's going on in their life, no matter how against or for society or your particular part of it they are, is someone who's wrestling with the ultimate question just like you are. What happens next? I'm not getting out of here alive. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm getting older, and sometimes at night I can have anxiety thinking about it. I can think I can't breathe if I'm not careful. There's great work being done. Great work being done. Mother Teresa said, when we read Matthew 25, when Jesus said, those who gave me something to drink when I was thirsty, those who visited me when I was in prison, those who clothed me when I was naked and gave me care when I was ill, those are the ones who enter or perceive and understand this kingdom of God. And those who, Matthew says, are on the left over here, those are the ones who cannot see what is right in front of them. They give evidence when they say to Jesus, when did we see you this way? Cannot see what is right in front of them. Mother Teresa takes that passage very literally and said it was the judgment of nations. It's tough. There's not easy answers. Tom Leida said to me once, Bill Easom gives good advice as a church consultant, but he doesn't have a congregation on Sunday morning. And then Leida proved what he said by embracing some of Easom's teachings, and he ended up having to leave the congregation he was in, so he was right. Sometimes Jesus or the Gospels say things that are wonderful on the one part, but they don't have a nation of sick, poor, and dying people to be concerned about. Jesus speaks from the position of being oppressed. I'm still a disciple of Jesus. I still take what Jesus says very literally in my life. But it's not in judgment over my nation, my community, or my church. They're not easy answers. And people on the extreme ends of all things have those answers. You can listen to them all day. They all sound alike, by the way. Left or right, doesn't matter. Out there on the peripherals, you all sound desperate. You all sound overconfident, and you lack self-assurity. But a little closer to the middle, we can admit things like Jesus is truly leading us toward the kingdom of God. But doesn't answer hard things like, open borders and constitutional rights and what should be legal and what shouldn't. It doesn't answer the problems with our correctional system. I'm going to jump on that one, and I'm going to be political for a minute and say, I wish that our country would grow up and stop calling it a correctional system. It's not. It's a punishment system. And I'm saying this for all of you to hear. The reason we don't call it that is because only barbaric people punish their weak, their afflicted, and those who are not like them. We've sunk a bit there. But it's not the end of the world. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. When Jesus in Matthew 25 says, come see me in jail, it's hard. What do we do with people who threaten us? What do we do with people on the fringes that make us uncomfortable, the people we would not take home with us? And they're not all criminals or sexual offenders. Some of them are people who love us and just need affirmation. Too many times we blame America or the politicians or even the church. And the psalmist reminds us, God, remind the nations that they're mortal. And these are things that deeply affect the fabric of our lives and the rhythm of our existence with one another. And these are things we must look deeper within ourselves for resolution. We must be willing to put ourselves at risk. We can no longer look to government which is an unreasonable expectation on our part to solve. We can no longer point a finger at the church that is not like ours, conservative or liberal, and say, we cannot do that. We must look deeper within ourselves where we find God, where we find the Christ, where we find our own humanity and our own divinity, where we are called to love even our enemies. May God have all the glory. Amen. Would the team come forward and will you pray with me?